Hello and welcome. My name is Nicholas Hall. I am the host today for our chat with Kristin and Jen from Balance Baby. For those of you that don't know, I founded Graham's Foundation in 2009 in memory of my son, Graham, who died as a result of his premature birth. We are committed to a world where no parent goes through the experience of prematurity alone. And our mission is to inform and guide parents of preemies so that they may confidently navigate the journey of prematurity. We provide our support through care packages, parent mentors, the My Preemie mobile app, and our social community. And so I want to welcome Jen and Kristin from Balance Baby. Hi
Hi.
there. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
Awesome. It's great to see you. I can tell you're in a place that's sunny and warmer because you're taking this chat outside. Yeah,
True story.
excellent. So you guys are, correct me if I'm wrong, you're in Orlando, Florida?
Yes.
That's right. And you both, I think, are you both currently, you've worked at or you are at, was it Winnie Palmer where you all worked alongside each other?
Yep, we did. I
Is that
worked
right?
there in outpatient for a few years and then the NICU for 10.
Okay, great. And I'm kind of a golfer, so I know Winnie was Arnold Palmer's wife. So
It's true.
And
yeah.
the Arnold Palmer Invitationals next weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the golf tournament. It's next
It is,
week.
it
Yep.
is that time of year. So awesome. Well, it's really great to be with you here today. Um, when I was in the NICU with my daughter Reese, I know we spent time with peers of both of yours, with helping our daughter to suck, swallow, and breathe, and learn how to feed, and the importance of touch. Which Kristin, you focus on feeding. Is that correct?
I
I
focus
got
on
it backwards.
therapy and
Got
the
it.
time.
Okay, that's right. See, I already got it backwards.
Don't worry.
And Jen is the feeding specialist. So both are incredibly important. Maybe, a lot of, our population is preemie parents. And so depending on where they are in their journey, they may know very well what each of you focus on and specialize. But maybe if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes each and just kind of sharing a little bit more about each of your specialties and what was it, I guess, if there's anything in particular that kind of drew you to your particular area of expertise.
Yeah. There we go.
I'm a physical therapist. I specialize in the NICU. I'm a certified neonatal therapist, and both of us are also neonatal touch and massage certified, and that is a certification for massage specifically for neonatal patients. And we just had a passion for working with these tiny babies. And I started in outpatient therapy, just working in pediatrics, and was lucky enough to get an opportunity to work in the NICU at the Children's Hospital here. And I would mainly focus on range of motion and building our osteopenia program and getting our babies to be at less risk of fractures, because when they're born premature, their bones are just a little bit weaker and they're not in utero pushing against mom's uterus anymore to help their bones get strong. So physical therapy would get involved in helping the babies get stronger, gain weight, and ultimately get closer to getting ready to go home. And we started just working on range of motion and positioning just early on. And then depending on how long a baby would stay in the NICU, I would focus on doing tummy time with the baby, getting the baby out on the therapy mat just to simulate what would be going on at home and getting them to tolerate the handling with breathing and just overall movements outside of the bed that they were in an isolette for so long. So preventing a lot of postural issues. If they have a preference to one side, I would focus on cranial molding and making sure their head's not getting flatter on one side. So a lot of that had to do with positioning and just getting their baby moving.
And how is that how has that evolved? My daughter was in the NICU 15 years ago. I do not remember any. I don't remember any tummy time.
Right. Well, it starts with advocation from the parents, like getting to hold their babies. That's number one. And getting them to know how to touch their baby in a developmentally appropriate way, and asking who the therapy team is in their NICU working with their baby. Because a lot of times maybe parents might not come during the day and when the rehab team is there. So my focus was to always try to meet with the parents. And I was lucky enough to have flexibility to work on the weekends. And so I would meet a lot of parents then.
Yeah,
I actually worked late nights. And that's when I would meet a lot of parents. And getting your NICU team to open up about teaching you how to hold your baby, not in a medical way, but more in a parent developmental appropriate way.
Yeah. I see I'm already diving into the discussion. We haven't gotten a chance to complete the bio chat. So if you could, yeah.
Yeah. I worked in outpatient setting for 6 or 7 years before entering the NICU, and had done a lot of behavioral feeding. And I've always loved babies. My undergraduate is actually in elementary education, so I definitely love towards pediatrics. And then, like Kristin, was lucky enough to get a position in the NICU, and literally did infant feeding for 10 years, worked on a lot of pre-feeding skills, which is a lot of postural positioning, preparing the baby to be able to even tolerate a bottle, considering their respiratory status and how we can ease into it and not get overly excited and kind of overshoot and then have to take a few days of rest. So I love feeding, and I always say we're kind of diving in like you, Graham. A lot of people say, well, how do you do that? It's so hard. I feel so lucky to be a therapist, because amidst a situation where a lot of people have to enter the room and deliver maybe not the best news all the time, we don't really ever have to deliver terrible news. We can come in and say, even in the worst of situations, here's what you can do. And so I love that as my role, for sure.
I know that my daughter did pretty well with the feeding in general, right? I know some of the challenges that a lot of parents can face. And I know that's so incredibly stressful for parents, especially when you transition home. And I think it's time. I think we can move on to this discussion, because we dove in. So we're going to be talking about a lot of issues that are beyond the NICU, but about some issues that parents, how they can prepare for that transition home. If we could go on to the next slide when you get a chance. So can you talk about maybe how, in each of your areas, how you've seen sort of the evolution of the therapy role in the NICU? I know most parents, we're afraid we touch our baby, we're going to break them. It's we're scared to even hold them. And I know, again, 15 years ago, so it was like another, a whole nother light. It was a lifetime ago, but things have probably evolved incredibly since then. But I also know that there's hundreds of neonatal intensive care units, and so different NICUs have different practices, and so I'm really kind of curious to learn more about perhaps
Hold on, everyone. I hear you. Hold on.
Okay, and we're back. Okay. All right, sorry about that, but we're back. I don't know if you heard my question, but really just how in each of your areas, some of the evolution that you've seen, maybe in the last 5 or 10 years, from a from touch,
Yeah.
from therapy, from feeding. If each of you might share a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You said it a few minutes ago. There's so much that has changed, and it's like the more you know, the better you can do. And I think working in a neonatal unit in particular, you have to be open to change and new research and what we learn. So before there was a time, which is not the truth anymore, when you weren't supposed to touch your baby and when you just force fed them because that's the way they would learn how to eat. And we've learned that that is doing more harm than good. So there's a lot of new practice on cue-based feeding. I think they're in progressive units. They're doing a lot more studying on feeding on respiratory support and what is the right way to go about that. How much is too much? How much is not enough? How to manage the feeding and respiratory support. And I feel like a really good feeding therapist is in with that new research. And touch, intentional touch, it's like there's nothing like it. There's research on even monkeys. There's research, I mean, there's even research on depression and giving people receiving hugs. There's research across all different cultures and age groups, but the power of intentional touch can absolutely not be replaced or replicated or even said to be traumatic at all. And so the reality is that premature babies receive so many negative touches just by nature of the medical environment. And so we have to counterbalance that fold with a positive and intentional touch to outweigh all of that negativity. So I think in the midst of a lot of different NICUs and cultures and just the background and research in each NICU, as a parent, regardless of where you are, the best thing that you can do is just ask a lot of questions. And it sounds bad, but interview everyone who walks into your baby's room. See what their experience is, what their thoughts. If you're told to do something or not to do something, ask, well, why would you recommend that? Or what do you think the benefits of that are? Or is there any research that you can give me to support that? You're their advocate, and this is the beginning of your journey advocating as a parent.
And are there any particular feeding programs or disciplines or studies that that you're aware of that are sort of feel like is a leading best practice?
There is cue-based feeding that was done years ago.
What does that mean? Sorry, for the lay person.
Yeah.
I know what cue means, but just for that parent, what would be what would be an example of the baby? I guess is the baby giving you a cue.
Right.
So imagine, parents are the ones that are sitting by the bedside for hours. Is there an opportunity where actually the parent could be looking for the cue, for example? And what might they be looking for?
Well, I think that there's such a variety of medical situations. And previously, I think we were more going on gestational age and starting feeding at a certain time frame instead of, sometimes there could be a 35-weeker that's ready, and sometimes there's a 40-weeker that's not ready. So we should not be looking at only age. There's so many other factors, medical course, respiratory, all other, other procedures or surgeries that have been done. But the thing that I would recommend to parents is if you can start to hold your sucking is a feeding cue, but it's also a developmental skill. And just because they're sucking doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to suck on a bottle and manage the milk that comes from that bottle. So I think the ability for a baby to be held during an NG feeding and demonstrate a sucking pattern throughout that when they're during the NG, you're doing all
NG is
tube, a feeding tube through the nose.
Okay, feeding tube, yeah, okay, yeah.
And so if you're able to hold your baby when they're getting their tube feeding without them having major stressors, laid hands, Brady events, desaturations, any vomiting and again, I'm giving some streamlined things, but there's always outliers to everything that's said. If your baby can tolerate that, then considering their gestational age, and everything else, then it might be time to ask the neonatologist or the nurse, hey, where are we at on considering like starting bottle feeding?
Yeah.
To breast. Yep. And
Yeah.
even moving to the breast and allowing them to be at the breast, a pumped breast, is a great thing. Even if mom isn't actively pumping, you're still getting such excellent
Right.
skin to skin during when their tummy is getting full and they're
Yeah.
to make a connection like, wow, feeding is a pleasurable event where I feel safe and nurtured and I'm close to my mom or my dad. Or
It makes total sense. And yeah, I don't remember us having that experience. So yeah, it makes total sense. I'd like to talk, Kristin, a little bit with the massage and the touch. You talked about, and I do remember reading about that as a certification. And maybe it's been around 20 years, maybe longer. But I do remember reading about it, and I'm curious to understand a little bit more about that. And obviously, from a parent perspective, I think I guess just asking whether or not there's anyone in the NICU that is that's certified, that has that certification, and then understanding what can we as parents do to help be of support. Again, we're often afraid we're gonna break our baby or hurt them, and that's the last thing we want to do. But we're potentially there for hours, and so how can we, while we're there, how can we be supportive and be of benefit to our baby's development?
That's what I would say is the number one goal of massage, is to teach the parents how to touch their baby. And the neonatal touch and massage course was created by Carol Ann Weitzman, and she goes around the country and teaches other therapists and nurses how to do these massage techniques on these preemie babies to teach parents. Ultimately, it's for the benefit of the baby, but it's a huge importance for parents and babies to bond and to have that connection with your baby. And your baby needs it, and also the parent needs it. So the benefits of massage are numerous. A baby is gonna be able to gain weight with massage, temperature regulation. They actually will sleep better and feed better because they are just tolerating touch in general. It's going to increase their bone mineral density, just like the range of motion, because they're getting input to the bones, and the bones are growing every day. And the thicker that the bone mineral density is, the heavier the bones are. So then the baby's gaining weight. But it honestly builds the confidence with the parent that they can touch their baby and they can help their baby.
Yeah.
You might not be the nurse, and you might not be the doctor that's there with them to save their life, but you're able to help them thrive every day, and each day is a new day. So just making sure you have a good team on board and allowing you to be a part of your baby's care. But
yeah, we also were present during hands-on a lot. I think that's like a very applicable place that parents can show up, is during every hands-on, which in our unit was every 3 hours. And you're there again to counterbalance all the negative, even a diaper change, which is the least of a NICU baby's things that are done to them. You can make a diaper change pleasurable by your scent is there, your voice is around them. You can give them positive touch like during a diaper change. So they do a diaper change and then they get a temperature under their armpit. That's the least. They might get an IV flush or a new stick. I mean, there's so many things that are done during hands-on. Those are the basic things. Their head measured, their belly measured, flipped. And if mom or dad can be there and present with your positive hands on the baby, and you're going to feel in the way of the nurses. And sadly, like the nurse might be a little perturbed that you're kind of in their way, but it's okay. It's it's just the beginning, and I would explain like why you're there. So that's a way that's very applicable to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to just transition a little bit and kind of talk about a little bit of, so we've been talking a lot about while the baby is in the neonatal intensive care unit. And, we as parents were excited about the possibility of transitioning home, right? And bringing our baby home. And then we realized that we don't have all of you to raise our hand and say, I've got a question.
Yeah.
All of a sudden we're excited, but then we're like, oh my gosh, we're complete, just like that, right? It's this safety net has completely been taken away, and we're out in the real world. And it's not as if it's not like a light switch that all of a sudden our preemie is a term baby and everything is a-okay. And I mean, there are still these developmental needs.
Right.
And often, and every NICU has a different level of training that they provide for the parents. Ours was, I think, how to put your baby in the seat in the car, and yay, goodbye. That's about it. So everything is. I know every NICU is a little bit different, but there's probably not enough, frankly, to lower the amount of fear that ultimately a lot of us parents feel once we do transition home. Some of our babies, depending on how early they were born, they may or may not qualify for state provided early intervention. But I know, again, in my experience, even though we qualified, the specialist is not necessarily, they have a much broader job role than helping you with your premature baby, right? They're looking, I understand, they're looking for a whole lot of other potential developmental risks that have nothing to do with the baby born prematurely. So depending, you may or may not be getting the level of support from an OT and PT and just overall development that your baby may actually need. So I'm just kind of curious, maybe, and please share with us about your company, Balanced Baby, and sort of how you work with parents and their babies once they do transition home, and also the interaction with perhaps the early intervention specialists, and just how that relationship works, and where you all have seen the opportunity to make an impact for those, for the parents and the babies.
Yeah, we developed Bounce Baby just because we saw a need in the community. There's a gap, like you said, from going home to actually getting services. And unfortunately, there's sometimes long waits to get in for services. And then when you finally do get them, hopefully there's a therapist in your community that can come to your house to receive the care, or there's a clinic nearby that you can go and that is able to provide those services. So we just developed Balanced Baby to bridge the gap with just parent education, educating parents on how to handle their baby, and working on feeding, getting floor time to be smooth, because we want to just make sure that your baby's thriving when you guys go home and you guys feel confident and empowered as parents to make those decisions and be able to just facilitate some of the things that we would be working on in the NICU. Just now that you're home, whether they're still on monitors or tubes for feeding or none of the above, you still are kind of traumatized from the NICU and the alarms going off, and now you don't have the monitor there. It's like, it can be scary, like hard to push your baby, or how much tummy time should they be doing, or how often are they feeding, are they crying all the time? Reading your baby's cues, like you said, is huge. And even though you might have been told in the NICU, you might not remember everything when you go home.
You won't.
And you're really sleep deprived on top of that.
Yeah, for sure. So are there maybe if you could provide just a few examples of different different scenarios where patients that you've worked with, and sort of the situation that they came came home with, and and whether it's around feeding. Again, I know how traumatic that can be for parents, and it can be deflating, sometimes incredibly deflating, because the parents know how important it is for their baby to thrive, that they need nutrition, and being, that feeling of a lack of success. Oftentimes, I think the parents feel the emotion of that. So I can imagine just how important you are, not only for the reality of the development of the baby, but also, frankly, the mental well-being of the parents as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have 4 kids and Kristin has 3, and we're well accustomed with the transition into parenthood is not terrifying for everybody. So it is compounded tenfold for a premature parent. A baby of a premature baby is even more complicated and terrifying. And Grant, you said it great. Not Grant, sorry, Nick. You said it great. You said that it's like you drive away from the hospital, and it's like all of that covering is immediately removed all at once. It's not gradual. It was there and now it's gone. And you're bringing not your full-term baby home, but your premature baby. So it is extremely terrifying. We have lots of stories, but there's one baby that we had in the NICU a few years ago, and she had a lot of trouble feeding in the NICU and was there forever for feeding. It was kind of what was holding her up, and finally passed, steps 1 through 25 and was discharged. But that didn't make feeding easy the day after she got home from the hospital. That didn't change. Right. And but she didn't have anything particularly that qualified her for our state early intervention. And she wasn't ready to go to like a crowded outpatient facility and bring her newly home sheltered premature baby to a place with kids of all ages 0 to 18, like an outpatient place to get a 30-minute appointment, which again, outpatient places are amazing and serve their role for sure, but they run a certain way. And sometimes it is just too crowded for like an immunocompromised newborn.
Yeah.
So we worked with her for a long time, and all the way through transition to solids. Just like, when do I increase how much milk she needs? What do I do here? When do I go up on the nipple flow rates? I've been using these hospital bottles. Now what am I supposed to do? When do I start solids? How do I do it? And then all the gross motor things, because she was a little bit tighter.
Yeah, she didn't like tummy time. So we often say you have to have the eating to be going well and breathing to be going well so you can sleep well and play well. If something is not going well, all those things during your daily routine are going to be affected.
Yeah.
And then how to do all this in a practical way while you're trying to return to work, manage the hospital bills, which I learned so much from this particular mom about the hospital bills and her trying to navigate that, spending hours on the phone with the hospital and insurance companies is the side nobody talks about, while taking care of her baby who's not eating well. And it is, you're right, it's like very, very hard. So kind of, I say bounce baby. We try to meet the mom where they're at, try not to overwhelm them with a new list of all things they need to do. But how can you make tummy time in your daily routine? How can we make eating pleasurable for both of you guys and get mom and baby spinning in, and dads? I'm just saying mom and baby in this positive dyad.
Yeah. How are parents finding you? I remember I had again, probably 10, 15 years ago, when there was just starting the conversation of telemedicine. And I was like, man, preemie parents, we're the perfect population because we understand how to use technology. We have these, for the most part, we have these instant questions, we've got these questions where by the time we get into a pediatrician, it's the time has passed. If they're not sure, what does the doctor on call say? Go to the ER. Can't tell you how many unnecessary ER visits we had, and I know other parents have. And so, again, having the ability, I mean, sometimes, yeah, you want to be in the flesh, in the person, but I can imagine that you all could see so much of how the baby is feeding, how the parent is attempting to feed, and how, and the tummy time and the touch. And I just, I mean, fortunately the babies are still small. So it's
Right.
like you can still fit everything inside the screen, if you will. So I just wonder if, so I thought, preemie parents would be a good use case, as they say in the business world, but we're just we're tiny babies in a too tiny of a population. So, uh, but
We,
with COVID, I mean, obviously telemedicine in general is taken off. So how do you all, in what you provide, the services you provide, is it all virtual, or for the most part virtual, regardless of whether the patients are in Orlando, or are you helping parents all over the country? Just kind of curious a little bit more as it relates to, I guess, the business of in delivering your services.
right.
I wish we had more virtual clients, but we do offer that as a service as well, just because of all the reasons you just listed. But we do offer it, and we also have a HIPAA compliant texting system where our parents can text into us 24/7. And they can send pictures and videos. We can video with them, like kind of like a FaceTime through it.
Like we're doing
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
You're right.
And just to help them carry over our recommendations that we give whenever we do have a live session. We give them a ton of information on the things that we want them to work on at home, because at our practice, we believe that the progress is made at home, not coming to the clinic 2 times a week for 30-minute sessions.
Yeah.
And then you go home and you're like, now what do? I forgot to ask all these questions, and I don't know how to implement any of the things that they told me to do. So that is huge in our model. We want to make sure we come alongside the parents and making sure they are able to carry over what we are telling them to do in our sessions.
Yeah, we've done virtuals even we did one from Brazil. We've done out of state several times. Licensure wise, we cannot treat over state lines because we're not licensed in each state.
Okay.
But we can get on and give developmental advice and suggestions for tummy time and feeding.
Just developmental guidance.
Yeah. And
really.
so we're definitely allowed to do that and meet with parents. Like I've been on many of more than hour phone calls with a screaming baby saying, okay, let's try this. Or do you see how baby's doing this or that? And just working with the parent through that stressful hour, I think is a support. So yeah, we love preemies. We love babies. Obviously, it's what we built our everything on. But we love most like empowering a parent. Like, you've got this. You're your baby's expert, not Joe up the street at ABC that you go to. Like, you're the expert on your baby. No one knows your baby as well as you do, and you are able to do all of these things and more.
Yeah. I was reading a few of the couple of the comments that you shared with me, and you talked about trying to help parents avoid feeling like they have to buy everything. That and and it's like your tendency is, oh my gosh, my baby made it, we're home. So you don't want to, you want to give them everything that you can. And wow, these companies just keep developing more and more things. So with that said, are there any aids, or is there anything that you actually have found to be, magical? And it's probably going to be the touch of the parent is probably, that it's probably the right answer. But aside from the magic of touch, I'm just kind of generally curious if there's, because it's been a few years since I had a preemie at home. So
yeah, I mean, again, I have 4 kids, and I can honestly, I'm kind of a minimalist and I'm very frugal. And
Hey, let's you and I should let's see who's more frugal and minimal. I'm pretty I probably need to be medicated for mine, but
well, we might share that. But I feel bad because you're right. Like there's not you have to remember the baby aisle is put together with millions of dollars of research, just like the cereal aisle, right? So, and there's not a developmental expert on every developmental product on the market.
yeah.
I could really have a whole podcast on this with you. But anyways, you really just need like a quilt or a blanket for the floor. Kristin's going to talk about something in a minute. I love the interlocking rings. I think they might be up to $9 now, but they were $4.98. And they're made by multiple companies. Sassy, Infantino makes them. But honestly, all of our sessions are done with, we have like 2 or 3 rattles, a blanket, one other object, which we'll get to in a minute, and a black and white like mirror with some crinkle paper on it. And I worked with a renowned genetics doctor who's literally been around forever in Central Florida. And she said to a parent once, "You're the one that gets bored with the toys, not the babies." And she's very sassy and direct because she's been around.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? She's right. That baby will play with the same 3 rings for hours. You're the one that is overstimulating them, changing the toy. And just like we're training our brains in childhood and adults to require that ongoing change of stimulation, the babies do not need it, nor do they want it.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to like really, really, really simplify. But the other main tool that we
joke that a lot of our parents go home with the balanced baby set up on the floor.
Yeah.
And we tell them all the time, because that's my goal, is really to show them that their baby can do tummy time and they can enjoy it. Because a lot of the complaints are, my baby hates tummy time. If a baby's not liking their belly, it sets them up for some issues like with achieving their milestones down the road, whether it's crawling and then eventually walking and sitting. So my goal is to get tummy time going well as soon as possible. And so I use a little travel neck pillow as my little tool to help them. And at Balance Baby, we have created our own little Balance Baby tummy time pillow, but it's pretty much a neck pillow, a travel neck pillow that's round. We call it our mini boppy. But propping a baby up on that just gives them enough trunk support to enjoy tummy time a little bit longer than just being flat on the floor. And it allows their tummy to expand. And whether they've just eaten or they're about to eat, it doesn't matter. They'll still enjoy doing tummy time, whether they are a spitter upper or not, because the pressure isn't on the belly at that point. But I love it because they don't have to be on their bellies on that. They can be on their side. They can be on their backs. And parents can actually put their baby down and they're doing floor time, and the parent can have
free hands
to do whatever they want. Yes. Enjoy their coffee or whatever.
Right.
Their baby's able to be on the floor and happy. That's our goal. So that's my little tip.
Hashtag tummy time.
Exactly.
Right. Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything, like I said, we could talk for hours because there's just so much. But before we wrap up, is there anything else, any last tips or ideas or thoughts that you would want to leave with our preemie parents that are watching here today?
I think that our mission at Balance Baby is enjoy the moments. They pass so quickly, and it is so easy, especially of parents of preemies, to be hyper diligent and just overly stressed and over analyzing every move, breath, and moment. So surround yourself with resources, whether it's family, friends, professionals, Instagram accounts that are encouraging and uplifting you and not making you second guess your every move. Because if you're stressed out and not doing well, then your baby is going to feed off of that. And so I would just surround yourself with a community that is supportive, and your community is going to be small and should be small, because too much information is bad information, even if it's all good information.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing, and know that you're definitely enough for your baby. You don't have to buy into products or people or services. Like, pick something that is providing you with realistic education, developmentally appropriate, that you can carry over with ease and cruise there, because you've been on a huge journey, and it's okay to go into cruise control for a little while.
Yeah.
So I would say that.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. I
Yeah,
really appreciate you guys taking the time with us today.
really appreciate it. We love the NICU.
Yeah, anytime any of your
Yeah.
parents, your preemie parents, have any questions for us, they can always reach out to us anytime.
Absolutely. Yeah. When this is shared, obviously they're gonna get all the information about Balanced Baby and ways to follow you. And I can imagine you're probably, I think you said you're developing some educational videos, and looking forward and excited about your continued development as well. We preemie parents know how important our therapists are. The whole team. It's a team approach, and you all make a huge difference. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Great day.
So before we wrap up today, I do want to take a moment to thank our longtime partner and supporter, Pampers, for their sponsorship in helping to underwrite today's chat. And again, thank you once again to Kristin and Jen from Balanced Baby. Thanks again to Pampers. And thank you to our preemie parent community for placing your trust in us to provide you with the information and guidance to help you confidently navigate the journey of prematurity.